Hello, and welcome to the Daily Space. My name is Annie Wilson, and most weekdays, the CosmoQuest team is here putting science into your brain. Wednesdays, however, are for Rocket Roundup. So, let's get to it, shall we? First up, on January 20th at 7:26 UTC, Rocket Lab launched their 18th Electron rocket for the mission. Another one leaves the crust. Dun, dun, dun. Another one leaves the crust. A play on Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. From Launch Complex 1 on the Mahia Peninsula in New Zealand. So, before we get into the mission details, let's check out this mission patch. It's shaped like a pin like you'd see on Google Maps. And in the foreground is the Electron rocket rising atop a red flame. In the background are green mountains and a rising orange sun. It reminds me of a sunrise over the Mahia Peninsula, where the launch site is. A black number 18 is on the side of the patch in one of the sun rays. Rocket Lab, Another One Leaves the Crust, which is the mission name, and OHB Cosmos, the customer name, are written inside that bold black border of the patch. Alright. So, payload. This time, Electron launched only a single payload into low Earth orbit. GMST, a prototype broadband communication satellite for OHB Group of Germany. Not much is known about the payload, except that it will enable specific frequencies to support future services from orbit, which suggests that the goal of the mission is to bring in use, so to speak, reserved frequencies for a planned communication satellite constellation. OHB Cosmos reported that the satellite is fully operational. After payload separation, the kick stage performed a deorbit burn to allow it to burn up in the atmosphere quicker. No first stage recovery attempt was performed. Unusual for space missions, launch was executed only 6 months after the contract was signed. That's incredibly fast. So anyways, we got launch video.
Come on, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Engine start.
And more after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. Our next rocket launch happened on January 20th at 13:02 UTC. SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 with another batch of Starlink internet satellites from the LC-39 Alpha pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This was a dedicated mission, so another 60 satellites were added to the mega constellation, bringing the total number of version 1.0 satellites launched to 953 out of a planned 1,440 in the first generation or shell of that mega constellation. The launch was originally scheduled for Saturday, January 18th, but was delayed several days due to the need for more pre-launch inspections and poor weather at the booster recovery zone. The launch featured the unprecedented 8th flight of booster 1051, and 8 minutes after launch, it landed successfully on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions. This was also the quickest turnaround between flights of the same booster, with only 37 days, 19 hours, and 32 minutes elapsing between the 7th and 8th flights of booster 1051. Both fairings had previously flown on Starlink launches, but were not recovered. Here's the video.
Stage 1 press for flight.
Nice, 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Falcon 9 switching downrange.
All right. It's not a SpaceX launch without a SpaceX landing.
There's a view of the drone ship on your left-hand screen.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
Looks like we lost that live view on the first stage. We'll wait for confirmation. And
Ta-da!
there you can see on your screen, we have landed the Falcon 9 for the 8th time. This is our life leader. What an amazing morning. That is an awesome view. And we're just waiting for Seco 1 on second stage.
All right, more rocket nerdery after this quick break. Welcome back for our last launch of the week. On January 24th at 1500 UTC, SpaceX, again, launched the Transporter 1 mission from Slick 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The mission was the fifth launcher. No, not the fifth launcher. It's the fifth launch of the Booster 1058, which previously launched the Crew Demo 2 mission and SpaceX CRS-21, among others. For those of you keeping score at home, Booster 1058 successfully landed on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, positioned off of the Bahamas. Both fairings for the flight were brand freaking new. No catch attempt was planned, but Ms. Tree and Ms. Chief successfully recovered both fairing halves from the water. This particular Falcon 9 launched into a polar sun synchronous orbit, an orbit where the satellite passes over a given location in the same local mean solar time each day. In the 60 years of launching satellites and rockets from Cape Canaveral, this is the only second rocket. This is only the second rocket, to do so. The first one was Salcom 1 Bravo back in August 2020, also on a Falcon 9. Previously, rockets were restricted from launching south due to the risk of rockets falling on islands downrange and injuring someone. So, the reason why the Falcon 9 is permitted to launch this way is because of its autonomous flight termination system, which enables quicker destruction of the rocket by putting the computer brains in control of the self-destruct button rather than relying on a human sitting in launch control. It may sound a little scary, allowing a rocket to blow itself up, but if something goes wrong, every single second counts, and the delay of receiving and processing the telemetry from the rocket and then transmitting a self-destruct command might make all the difference. Oof. All right, before we get into the payload details and all of this stuff, let's watch the launch and landing videos. So first up, obviously, the launch. You can see how sooty the booster is, the first stage.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
Pitching downrange. Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
Alright, and onto the landing.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
LOS Stage 2, Cape Canaveral expected.
Ta-da!
And Falcon 9 returns safely once again. That is the 5th time for this particular booster and the 73rd recovery of an orbital class rocket. Great way to start off the mission and a great way to start off the Sunday.
All right, more stats and stuff after this break. Welcome back. So about that payload for the Transporter 1. This is a photo of the Transporter 1 payload stack. It's a lot. It's a lot. Notable on this side of the stack being the photo on the left, just everything, because there would be photos from all around the stack, obviously. But anyways, notable on this side of the stack are the D-Orbit's Ion SCV space tug with satellites from Swarm and Planet, and the 10 Starlink satellites. Keen-eyed viewers will notice a difference with these Starlinks compared to previous Starlinks. Specifically, the black pipe-like objects visible in the middle of this image, which we have circled on the right. And people have speculated that these were the much delayed inter-satellite laser links. And yeah, they are. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk took to Twitter to confirm that was the case. The inter-satellite laser link is key to the Starlink system because instead of sending a packet from a customer to a satellite to the ground station to another satellite and so on and so forth, the packet can go from the customer, so from the ground to a satellite in space to another satellite in space, and on and on and on until it finally goes back down to a ground station. This reduces network latency, which most end users experience as lag. According to Musk, all of the satellites launched in 2022 will have laser links. These 10 are development models. So these are the first Starlink satellites to be deployed into a polar orbit. With their laser communication links, they should be able to provide coverage further north and south than the current Starlink constellation does by relaying data with those laser links from one satellite to another until it reaches a Starlink that is over one of the ground stations. This is a prelude to providing internet service in extreme northern and southern locations where high-speed internet is often either not available or not affordable. As you can see in this photo, there are a lot of things in the payload stack where you would normally expect to see a whole stack of 60 Starlinks. This is because Transporter 1 carried a whopping 143 satellites into orbit. Yep. Yeah, 143. That is the most ever carried into space on a single rocket. The previous record was 104 satellites launched on India's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle C-337 mission in December of 2017. 133 of the spacecraft on the Transporter 1 were commercial and government payloads, while the remaining 10 were SpaceX's own Starlink satellites, which we've talked about. And some of these payloads were deployed from this payload transporter and then deployed more satellites. So you have nesting satellites. I can't even joke about this. There were satellites and things that are essentially satellites. So, anyways, like the Starlinks aboard, quite a few of these satellites are going to be additions to existing constellations like Planet Superdove, Swarm Space Bee, Inspire's Lemur 2. There is not enough time to talk about each and every single one of these 143 satellites, so I figured I'd pick a few to share with you. First, NASA's VR-3X satellites. They were unique because they didn't deploy with the rest of the satellites. I did just mention that satellites deployed satellites, but this is a little different. Instead, they were deployed from the aft or lower fuel dome of the second stage, so those satellites are not in the picture on the screen. This is a common practice on the Centaur upper stage on ULA's Atlas V, but it happens very infrequently on the Falcon 9. The VR-3X swarm of 3 satellites will demonstrate autonomous radio networking and navigation. Another notable satellite on Transporter 1 is NASA's Pathfinder Technology Demonstrator 1, which is testing a propulsion system with a water-based propellant system called Hydros, developed by Tethers Unlimited of Bothell, Washington, as part of NASA's educational launch of NanoSatellites 35 mission. On board this tiny satellite are the bits needed to communicate with the ground, the bits needed to move around in space, some solar panels, and a tank of water. According to NASA, PTD-1's propulsion system will produce gas propellants, a mix of hydrogen and oxygen from water, only when activated in orbit. The system applies an electric current through water to chemically separate water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen gases in a process called electrolysis. The CubeSat's solar arrays harness energy from the sun to supply the electric power needed to operate the miniature electrolysis system. So hydrogen and oxygen are not usually allowed in CubeSats due to the danger to other payloads on a rideshare mission. Oxygen and hydrogen can be pretty reactive. However, because they start as water, which is relatively harmless, and are only converted to hydrogen and oxygen on orbit, it wasn't considered a hazard during launch. Developing innovative propulsion systems like these for use on CubeSats will help them maintain orbit, maneuver to avoid other objects near them in space, and hasten deorbit, helping to reduce an increasingly cluttered space environment. If you're curious, a full list of the satellites available, or the satellites that were on this flight, is available in the show notes for this episode on dailyspace.org. There are quite a few, and I really didn't have time to get into all of them. All right, after this break, we'll do stats and the fact. See you in a bit. Welcome back. So earlier I mentioned that booster 1051 recently returned from its 8th flight, the current record for a Falcon first stage. Booster 1051 is now the life leader for the Falcon 9 fleet, which currently consists of 13 vehicles. It first flew on Demo 1 in March 2019, the uncrewed demonstration flight of Crew Dragon that paved the way for Demo 2 and Crew 1 in 2020. It was the first Falcon 9 core to feature the upgraded, bear with me, Composite Overwrap Pressure Vessel 2.0 after the Ammo 6 mission exploded on the pad during a pre-flight launch test in September 2016 due to the failure of the original version of that pressure vessel composite overwrap. Anyways, Booster 1051's second flight was from Slick 4 Echo in California. It launched the RadarSat constellation for Canada in June 2019. After this, Bravo 1051 launched 4 Starlink missions in January, April, August, October of 2020. And then in December of 2020, it launched SXM-7, which went on to geostationary orbit. Its 8th flight was the most recent Starlink launch on January 20th. To wrap things up, here's a running tally of a few spaceflight statistics for the current year. There are currently 5 toilets in space, 3 are installed on the ISS, 1 on the Crew Dragon, and 1 on the Soyuz. There have been 6 total orbital launch attempts so far this year, and total satellites from launches right now is 216, which is almost a fifth of all satellites put in orbit in 2020 from just 6 launches, and 65% of them were from the last launch, Transporter-1. So yeah, it's gonna be a busy year, folks. Alright, I keep track of orbital launches by where they launched from, also known as spaceport. Here's that breakdown. China, 4. Nope. China does not have 4 launches. My apologies. USA has 4 launches, China has 1, and New Zealand has 1. Alright, so your random space fact for this week is that Sol 3000 for the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity rover occurred on Mars at about 7:13 Pacific Standard Time on January 12th, 2021. A Sol is a Martian day equivalent to 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35.224 seconds. A lot of Martian mission handlers have watches that show Martian time, and during particularly exciting parts of the mission, they will live on Martian time. This is awesome in one aspect. You get an extra 39 minutes and 35.224 seconds each and every day. It's also awful because you're moving in and out of sync with literally everyone else in the world, which is harder than what you might think. But Mars watches, people. They literally took these watches to a watchmaker and had them adjusted to run on Mars time. So there are scientists with Mars watches who live on Mars time so they can more effectively talk to their spacecraft, and that is pretty freaking awesome. And Curiosity has lived 3,000 sols. It still has a long ways to go to be the longest lived rover. That record right now still goes to the Mars Exploration Rover Opportunity that explored for 5,352 sols before its signal was lost in 2018 after a sunlight blocking global on Mars dust storm. And before we go, we want to acknowledge that on this day, January 27th, in 1967, the Apollo 1 crew was lost during a fire that occurred in their capsule during pre-launch tests. This accident, which killed astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, my apologies if I got that wrong, led to a number of changes in capsule design. Tomorrow, Beth and Pamela will discuss this accident, as well as the January 28, 1986 loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger and the February 1st, 2003 Space Shuttle Columbia disaster. Space is hard, and we are so grateful to the men and women who have risked their lives over the decades as humanity has worked to build a presence in space. For now, this has been the Daily Space.